Hello and welcome to Conversations. I'm Jim Blow, your host. Very pleased to have joining me today Congresswoman Debbie Dingell from the 12th District of Michigan. Welcome back to Conversations.
Jim, it's great to be with you.
It's always a pleasure to have you here, and you're on a recess from Washington, which doesn't mean you're not, you could say, working, but it's really what is the core of a member of Congress, and that is working with the people in your district.
Call it district work period. So I'm scheduled fully the next 2 weeks.
What types of things in these 2 weeks are you going to be doing in the district, which is what? Eastern Washtenaw all the way
to downriver. So I have Ann Arbor, Ypsi Township, some of the surrounding communities. Then we go into Wayne County. We have Belleville, Dearborn, and the downriver. So it's a diverse district, and I like it a great deal, and I get around the whole district.
So what types of things do you have scheduled for these 2 weeks?
Well, so this weekend I had the Librarian of Congress, and it brought all the librarians from all the local libraries together to be with the Librarian of Congress in Taylor, and I raced from there to do the rally with the students here in Ann Arbor and to march with them. In the afternoon, I went to a moose hall and was supporting them on a fundraiser for hospice. I did several more. I went by a VFW hall. I went to the YMCA's annual celebration downriver. I went to a fundraiser at the mosque. And I went to a charitable auction for a high school.
All of these different wide variety of meetings and of opportunities to meet with constituents, are they all, you could say, planned or scheduled by someone outside who contacts your office and tries to get you there? Or are there certain things that you do outreach, your office does outreach to get you into different areas that maybe you haven't had a chance to really sit with the people?
It's a combination. I have certain rules. I want to make sure I'm in a union hall every week, and I come home every week. I leave in time to be there for the first votes in Washington, and I return as soon as votes are done. I'm one of the first people on a plane back home. But I try to get into schools. When the weather's getting better, I'll be at the farmer's market. You'll start to see me now there every weekend in Ann Arbor until the weather gets cold in the fall. I try to get around the district and hear what's on people's minds, but then there are also planned events. I do town hall meetings. I probably have done more town halls than almost any member in Michigan because I think they're important. I'm doing a town hall tonight. I have several town halls planned throughout this district.
And when you say a town hall, is that simply an opportunity for people in a given area to come and not just meet, but to ask questions, to find out what's going on? And so it's really an outreach of you and your office to get a better sense of what is on the minds of the voters.
That's correct. Well, and I do different kinds of town hall meetings. I try to always include the local state legislators because we all work together on issues. And I've been doing town halls most recently this last month on guns and gun violence. And I've been going into the schools. Last week I did the school superintendent set up, and with the Sheriff Clayton, we did 3 school assemblies at Ypsi High to talk about with the kids about how they felt about gun safety. Even this morning, I received a number of letters from Gabriel Richard downriver from students who were very concerned about guns and what their school was going to be able to do. And I went and met with the seniors this morning. I met at another school in the district, Miller High School, with the 3rd and 4th graders. And they asked me all kinds of questions. So you do all kinds of different events because that's what keeps I want to make sure I know what people are worried about, what they care about, what do I need to be servicing them. And I am one of the people thought I was certifiable, but I said Donald Trump could win this election and that this state was competitive. And the reason why, I was listening to people. I knew that they were scared about the economy. They were worried about trade. They were worried about their pensions. If you work your district, you're paying attention and you know what's happening.
You mentioned the district is very diverse in that, and you mentioned the gun violence, and the focus appears the last month to be more on the marches, the efforts of students to address some of the gun violence aspects. Yet there are many members of, I would assume, this district who would oppose a lot of restrictions or are more supportive of, allowing, one of the issues is, allowing teachers to have weapons in schools. How do you balance rather emotional and yet very diverse opinions?
I'm really committed to this issue. For starters, I have my own very personal story, but my household probably reflects the ambiguity and the diversity of this country. I'm married to a man who was an NRA board member, who is an outdoorsman, believes in very responsible gun ownership, but believes in the right to bear arms. I don't want to take people's guns away, or I don't want to eviscerate the Second Amendment, but I grew up in a house. I know what it's like to be that young person scared to death of a gun, what it is to have to hide in a closet. And I think that every time there's a discussion about guns in this country, everybody goes to their corner and they have the same old discussion and nothing happens. I think our kids are afraid to go to school. I was afraid at home, but I never worried about my security or safety at school.
In looking at that, and I guess the question is how, or in what way is this different now than the different incidents that we've, as a country, gone through over the last, since Columbine in the 90s. There's talk immediately after, and then it seems as if it gets pushed to the side. Will Congress take any action, do you think?
I think our job is to make sure that it isn't like every other time, and I think our young people are the people that can make a difference. I've said to my colleagues, we need to just step back and let them be the voices. They need to be the change that we want to see. It's not going to, it will be the same old thing if everybody forgets, or if this energy and this passion that we've seen in the last month isn't sustained over the summer or into the fall. People ask about what's the power of the NRA, and people frequently say it's that they, make campaign. But I actually disagree. I mean, if you look at there's not to say that there are not some people who have gotten very significant dollars, and you can't. But the average member is getting from them what they're getting from other PACs or other interests.
1,000 or 2,400, whatever the limit is.
But the NRA members vote. They are single issue voters. They care. They are afraid that someone's going to take their gun away. But I know NRA members who are supportive of some reasonable gun
limitations or restrictions or...
Well, I mean, I think, so most people didn't, on Saturday, people didn't realize that even the omnibus, and it wouldn't have happened if the kids had not had their voices out there, actually clarified that the CDC, this is so stupid that we were at a point, but that the CDC can conduct research on gun violence. And it also passed the NICS fix, so that we've got to make sure that that national information system that's being checked when people buy guns has the data that it needs. But we need to strengthen the background check. Two other pieces, domestic violence. If someone's convicted of a felony,
the key there is convicted, not just accused.
Not accused, but is a convicted felon because of domestic violence with a partner with a gun, they shouldn't have access to a gun again. And someone who has stalked someone with a gun who's convicted shouldn't have access to a gun. I think we've got, the President of the United States agrees on that. And I actually have a bill in it. It's been there for a couple of years on that. I think there's total agreement on the bump stock. I think that may be the next piase that moves, but we've got to figure out.
And that's what even the NRA has said they, I won't say their support, but they won't object to.
They're not blocking, correct.
Yeah,
and the President has given orders to the Judiciary Department that they
now, is that able to
regs.
be done by the Attorney General's office?
Well, many people think that they are not. Okay. So that's one of the reasons it's important for Congress to pass legislation banning it. Because
and not allow a future one to step in, as we've seen in other cases, to change without legislation.
If you put the executive order out, it'll be challenged in the courts.
Yeah.
If Congress passes it, then it's clearly the law, and it can't. The NRA may, the NRA has indicated that they won't try to challenge it. The other piece of legislation that's very personal to me, and I think is very important, is what's called red flag legislation. Now, I want to be very sensitive. We've got to remove this stigma on mental health. But if a family or law enforcement deems that someone is a threat to themselves or to the community, they should be able to remove that gun for a period of time. Fred Upton and I, who are trying to find that common ground and are going to keep working, will be introducing with our colleague Susan Brooks red flag legislation that's already passed in Indiana, that Vice President Mike Pence and Governor Mitch Daniels, very conservative.
Right now.
Indiana is a very conservative state, but they have agreed to. Law enforcement can take that gun away for 14 days. You have up to 14 days there. You then do get your day in your court. No, but you go to, you have due process, because then the person whose gun has been taken away can go to court and argue that it shouldn't have been, or the court can then find that there was justification, and you continue to work while they're getting the help. But that's what we need to do. I mean, what happened in Florida, the system failed in so many ways, not once, but multiple times.
One of the quick issues is, to what extent are these limitations laws a federal, and to what extent, as you mentioned, Indiana and the states? And is that going to be one of the issues that people will argue this is a great idea, but the federal government's not the one that should be dealing with it? Individual states should, and the state should have that choice. The states' rights issue.
What we're going to be doing, we're trying to finalize what we're going to be introducing. One, clearly the federal government can incentivize state governments. And there are clearly some things. I do believe that each community understands their community. So there are communities within limits, but we can't at times subscribe from Washington what's the right. So, some of the questions become, should there be armed guards in schools? Should there be metal detectors in schools? We shouldn't be dictating that from Washington. Communities need to worry about keeping their kids safe, but I think everybody wants to keep their kids safe. So what do we need to do to have safe and secure schools? Now, in the omnibus, we passed separate legislation, and it was included in the omnibus safe school legislation to award money to help make the schools more secure. But I think the communities themselves are better able to determine how do we keep the schools safe than us dictating that from Washington.
Great. We're going to take a short break, come back and look at other issues that Congress and you are focusing on. Ask our viewers to stay with us. We'll be back in just a moment.
Here at CTN, we offer a variety of different training workshops for our Ann Arbor residents as well as local nonprofits. Learn about different editing programs. Final Cut Pro, iMovie, and even Motion is available. Or how about studio production? You can even sign up for our Hotline Studio workshop, where you can direct and produce your own television show. Go online to a2gov.org/CTN and head over to our Workshops tab. There, you can find a link to our convenient online sign-up sheet, as well as an in-depth description of what each workshop has to offer. CTN. Connect, create, communicate.
Did you know that CTN welcomes the members of the Ann Arbor City Council to Ward Talk? On the third Wednesday of every month, a different representative from one of the city's 5 wards joins us in the studio to discuss matters important to the people and government of Ann Arbor. Submit your questions for the next episode of Ward Talk by emailing ctn@a2gov.org or visiting our Twitter page @CTNAnnArbor.
Hello and welcome back to Conversations. Today I'm meeting and talking with Congresswoman Debbie Dingell from the 12th District. Talked before the break, you mentioned working with Congressman Fred Upton on issues related to gun violence, another area that the two of you have introduced legislation dealing with the opioid crisis. Why is this the last, 3 to 5 years, it seems, become such a big, but not only a big issue, but more of a crisis? Is it simply more people having access to certain drugs and that, or is it simply sort of it getting the press more?
I think it's a very complicated issue.
Yeah.
You know, it's a very personal issue to me because my father was an opioid drug addict before anybody understood that prescription drugs were addictive. But we've seen more unemployment. We've seen more drugs on the street. We have many unfilled jobs in this country, and most people don't understand that the leading reason for these jobs being unfilled is because people are flunking the urine drug tests.
Okay.
I think there's more attention on it. I think it's complicated. I think when we talk about opioid drugs, people are going to the street. First of all, people have been getting prescriptions that have been sitting in medicine cabinets, and there's a whole variety of reasons. There's not one reason. It's complicated. But we're also seeing more street deaths. Drugs are being cut with fentanyl, with and so we need to attack this from a multi-pronged approach. I mean, I read an article over the weekend, and it's something that I've become very concerned about. And oncologists in particular have been coming to me about this, is the pain refugee. And we have to not stigmatize people with legitimate pain needs who need access, which is where we have the tendency in this country for pendulums to swing too much. I think I have so many thoughts on this. I want to make sure I'm being, we've destroyed the mental health system in this country over the last couple of decades. So a lot of people are treating depression and anxiety themselves. They're self-treating, so through alcohol or through drugs.
Street drugs often.
Street drugs or prescription drugs that they're buying from somebody. So we need to help people. We need to remove the stigma from mental health. We need to teach kids the implications of what's happening to drugs. We need to invest in better research so that we're actually developing drugs that treat pains that aren't addictive, which is one of the biggest things that we need to do. But we also need to make sure that cancer doctors and other patients with my husband, see, that's, again, it's real life that helps you, has very intense chronic pain, and he goes to a pain doctor, and he does need to take pain pills. So we need to not swing the pendulum too far, but we need to really understand we've got a problem.
What have you and Upton from the west side of the state, what have you introduced, and how is Congress potentially able to address some of these issues?
And it's not just, Fred and I have most recently introduced a bill, but Tim Walberg and I have had a bill called Jesse's Law that was in last Congress and this Congress, and I believe was actually included to some extent in the omnibus, which would, so that Jessie was a young girl who had an addiction and then was an athlete and had surgery on her knee, and the treating doctor didn't know she had a drug problem, and she was prescribed opioids and unfortunately had a drug overdose and died. So it's ensuring that doctors have access to previous medication. It's ensuring that we are investing in treatment programs, that we are helping to educate doctors about how much they should prescribe and not overprescribe for certain illnesses, and that we are investing in this research, as I said before.
You mentioned a couple times the omnibus bill that was approved, last week by Congress that funds the government through, October 1?
October 1, the next fiscal year.
Okay. And one of the things that...
Which is October 1, 2018.
It's coming up quickly.
Correct.
One of the issues that has been left out in the original proposed budget deals with the Great Lakes and funding for a wide variety of things related to the Great Lakes. In the omnibus bill, that financing was, you say, put back in. at the level it had been. It had been reduced by, what, 90% or something?
So we have an EPA that doesn't care much about environmental regulations and is trying to undo all kinds of things that have happened in the last decades. It's not even a decade, but one of the things is that they always target elimination of the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and Republicans and Democrats alike work together to ensure that the real budget does have those full dollars, that full funding in there. So we restored it and increased the funding for the Great Lakes Initiative to protect our lakes, to protect them from Asian carp. Last year, they also tried to eliminate the EPA lab in Ann Arbor, and I'm very proud of the fact that, one, we fought it, and two, at an EPA hearing with the committee that I'm on, I asked the EPA administrator, and he did agree that that had been a mistake and committed to keeping the Ann Arbor lab open, which was very important.
Now, in something like that, to what extent is it, you could say, politics? In other words, you look at something like the Great Lakes funding, as you say, Republicans and Democrats from 11 different states, plus others, are concerned. So you could argue realistically, the Congress is going to have the ability to put that funding back in. The executive branch, the president and the EPA can say, we tried to reduce, to cut funding or to lower the cost of government, but we had to balance everything. We had to accept some of the things we didn't want to get some of the things we did want. When the president, the morning after he has said he will support the bill, starts texting or twittering that he may veto it, how much of it is purely politics and how much is it seriously a potential shift in how the government's run?
So it's a complicated question. First of all, the process, which is very broken, is that the president submits his budget to the Congress in January. His proposed budget is a reflection of his values. Yeah. So when he doesn't fund the Great Lakes, it shows he doesn't care a whole lot about the environment. So that's there. Unfortunately, the bill that we voted on last week was 2,200 pages. Right. It was filed late Wednesday evening. We were supposed to have voted on it the week before. It was filed late Friday night. I spent the night in my office on Wednesday night. This is because I was trying to get a copy and to read it on my iPad. And quite frankly, you cannot read a 2,200-page bill on your iPad. Yeah. And we voted on it within less than 12 hours of its having been filed. I took a picture of myself with this pile. It was reported to us what was in it, or some of the things that was in it.
That came from who?
The budget was really negotiated by 4 people.
Okay. So in this case, it wasn't the president's budget that was presented Wednesday night.
No, this was the congressional budget that had been negotiated by the Speaker of the House and the Majority Leader of the Senate and the minority leaders of the House and the Senate. Okay. But the president had agreed to this bill on Wednesday. Right. When asked, he had said that he would sign it, which is reflective of this president that he tries to create chaos. I didn't know how he was going to vote. I was one of the very last people to vote. I don't think this is the 5th time we've kicked the can down the road. We need to go back so that we're doing individual appropriation bills on each of these areas so that we know what we're voting on, that businesses need certainty, so do the people that are operating inside the government. The Secretary Mattis, the current Secretary of Defense, who's a very good and honorable man, said that the biggest enemy of the United States of America is these continuing resolutions, these continuing budget bills. They need certainty to be able to plan for our national security. And there were many good things in this bill that were good for the state of Michigan. I mean, besides funding the Great Lakes, there was important money for our young people, for nutritional programs, for trying to help children with our students with educational loans. I could go through a list, but I was concerned about what it didn't have either. Yeah. It didn't stabilize the healthcare market, so the cost of healthcare is continuing to go up, which people don't understand was a actual output of the tax bill that everybody, I mean, they need to. The president made, and the Republicans in the Senate promised Susan Collins we would stabilize those healthcare markets. That didn't happen. DACA.
Right.
I voted against the last budget bill because DACA wasn't in there.
Right.
And then it was the most disingenuous thing that the President of the United States could ever say, that he didn't want to vote for because DACA wasn't in there. DACA wasn't in there because Republicans wouldn't agree to put DACA in there. We need comprehensive.
With the understanding that their leader, the President, did not support putting it in, at least in the way that
I'm not
potentially
even,
people want.
it just didn't happen. And I'll tell, I've said months ago that compromise is not a dirty word.
Right.
And so by Christmas time, when we were continuing to reject these bills, and we needed to do something for these kids who are scared to death. They're human beings. They came to this country as children. They're Americans in every way possible, and they don't know what's going to happen to them. I think the wall is one of the stupidest things I've ever heard. I think it's a symbol of division, and I don't think it's going to do anything to keep us safe. But if we could get DACA, then I would support money in that spending bill for the wall just to reach that compromise. But we didn't do either. And we continue to have these kids scared to death.
In our last minute or two here, looking to the rest of 2018, budget's done. Other issues that you are going to focus on over the next 8 months or so?
I've already talked about them. We've got to get DACA done. We cannot give up on DACA. There are a number of health care bills I care deeply about. We need to worry about net neutrality. I could go through a list. I'm not going to stop. I have autonomous vehicles, keeping the auto industry healthy. There are a lot of environmental issues. I have a very full plate of things I am not going to stop working on.
Well, with that, I hope you will be willing to come back and update us on where both you stand and Congress stands on a wide variety of those issues. And I want to thank you for your commitment, your time, your town meetings, your opportunities to hear what the voters, but more importantly, just the people in your district are saying.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It's good to have been with you.
I want to thank our viewers for joining us today and look forward to your continued support here on Conversations. Thank you.